Goeienaand, good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world. Well, when you get stories like the one I'm going to tell you about now, you've got to share it with the world. Because what you have here is a lady who basically made it her life mission to try and help provide food security for the African population, and not only food security but employment, etc., etc. And she set up a very unique NGO. So, this is her story, and this is how her project was sabotaged. And this happened in South Africa. And she says, I was born in a little rural village called Ashawi, in the heart of Zululand, in the province now called KwaZulu-Natal. According to international determination, this makes me a South African by birth, not by culture, colour, or anything else. The Zulu people often speak of where the umbilical cord is buried, which is proof of where you belong. This blog is interrupting my life story and previous episodes and is inspired by the events that unfolded in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng over the last couple of weeks. Mayhem, rioting, violence, killings, and pure anarchy swiped the override card through the computers of normality and life, which will probably never be the same again. And I asked myself, could this have been avoided? While terror was infiltrating the veins of people and flooding through the heart chambers, it couldn't be filtered out. Instead, it grew in capacity until the heartbeat raced and sleep wouldn't come. I have never noticed colour, the colour of people. Growing up under the apartheid government couldn't even manipulate my vision. People are people, and all are equal. All lives matter under the umbrella of heaven. Most of my life has been dedicated to making life better for people. This included the private school registered and run on the farm in Zululand, housing and training youth for the Department of Agriculture, and thereafter travelling the rural areas of KwaZulu-Natal and training people in all areas of agriculture, including how to run a business. My years of integration within these communities and other provinces of South Africa gave me a first-hand experience and insights into the struggles and challenges. Of these, there were many. Much of the land in KwaZulu-Natal is incorporated into the Ngonyama Trust, headed by the Zulu King and supervised by his chiefs, Amakhosi and the headmen, or Indunas. The tribal system controls these areas, which are also subject to the tribal customary law. Under this system, a person could never own the land they live on. The occupant is issued with a PTO, or permission to occupy, and hence no development could occur through utilizing the land as collateral. A neat way to control people. The chief has the power to evict anyone at his whim and fancy, or in his endeavours to eradicate political interference. He has the power of a dictator, and his subjects were just that, subjects. When one of these subjects enters the chief's area, she is required to sink lower than the height of the chief and to move backwards along the floor as an entry. Eyes could not be raised to engage with the chief. They had to remain looking down as a sign of respect, demeaning to anyone outside of this culture. It was accepted that this was the way it had to be done. In an academic paper which I wrote for the DBSA, the Development Bank of South Africa, I stepped up my boldness levels and poked my neck out of its boundaries and said that it is time for the people of Africa to stop blaming the colonialists for their woes and to look at the chieftain system, which its inherent tribalism and subjugation. Massacres and violent bloodshed have been perpetrated in the name of tribalism. I don't need to list the numbers or proof here. There is enough of that available to anyone looking for it. I was a member of the white tribe in South Africa by birth. As a newborn baby, I arrived clean and innocent into a world formed by my predecessors, and like my tribal brothers and sisters, I had to obey the rules or pay the price. I hated what I saw around me, and purposed from a young age to share whatever I had to share with others who had less. Dignity was paramount, and where I could, I intervened in behavior that proposed to dehumanize anyone. This always came at a cost, personal and more. The government ANC, the ruling party, saw fit to introduce a system into South Africa which formalized the classification of people into colour for the purpose of business and income earning. It affected employment, who was awarded a tender, and who one receives supplies from or does business with. When this happened, I could sort of understand that the government was out to harvest some retribution for the hardships induced by the previous regime, but I could not understand why it wanted to perpetrate the very nature of the beast that it sought to overthrow in a struggle that took years to achieve. Without heeding my own caution, derived from my research on Africa and its character, I saw fit to ignore the hatred for the white person, believing that I had enough love and energy to neutralize that toxic energy. With eyes shut and heart open, I set off on a path of changing lives for the better, always equipping and empowering. After being in the remote, rural and forgotten fields of people ignored by government for too long, and realizing that nothing was going to change for these people, I stood up one day and decided to make the changes as far as I could possibly do, myself. Joined by my daughter, Philippa, we designed a project where we would supply the inputs for communities to grow their gardens. Many had been trained by me, focusing on using what commodities were available to them, resulting in mostly organic produce. They would be supplied with seed and seedlings, grow the produce using their land and time and harvest for collection by our 5-ton trucks. These trucks would be filled with bread for delivery to the rural areas which were accustomed to being served the expired bread from bakeries. We had erected a bakery on our property purely for this project. The elderly ladies, or gokos, would sell the bread, making 1 rand per loaf for themselves. Job creation. We would then sell the collected produce, but the produce would be paid for on collection, so there was no risk to the grower. We shouldered all the risk. We were noticed by government and asked by COGDA to do workshops in all the tribal areas so the chiefs could get their communities active and contributing to the food security challenges in the country. I became a popular and loved person by the chiefs, eating at their tables often. Speaking the Zulu language added to the level of trust and interaction that caused the project to grow from 350 growers to 1,200 within the space of 3 months. As neighbours witnessed the growers increasing their income levels and attaining dignity through their own hard work, they too joined the project and became productive. Then it happened. The BMF, or Black Management Forum, of which I was once a member, even though I was white, started pressing government to remove white women from the historically disadvantaged list on the Black Economic Empowerment score sheet. My daughter and I were both white women. Owning the company that ran the project, the company was formed on the insistence of the funders of the project. The BMF achieved its objective when late in 2014 the government did just that, as they were pressed to do. White women were removed from the historically list of disadvantaged. At that point, the project had 3,500 tons of produce waiting for harvest. The value of this produce was in the region of 17 million rand. It was here that a corporate from Johannesburg wielded a blow. They refused to buy the produce until we, as two white women, removed ourselves from the project. After consultation and decisive action, we handed the project over to two young black men belonging to the youth sector of society and who belonged to YARD, Youth in Agriculture and Rural Development, as we believed they were the future of the country. How wrong we were. They took possession of the company and the assets, and after me facilitating the introduction to the corporate representative, they signed an agreement. Does Africa abide by signed agreements? I lift my eyebrows as I look at history. After receiving possession of the company and assets, the two men never graced any sector of the project with their presence, let alone trucks to load up produce and get it marketed. 1,200 people were left, abandoned by their own people. I've observed the uprisings in South Africa from this perspective. Poverty has disempowered people. The population has grown exponentially, and neither infrastructure nor service are adequate any longer. The looting of public funds is now international news. State-owned enterprises are bankrupt. The millions of people who were used to vote the governing party into power are forgotten in the race for enrichment. And who has been blamed? The white man. People like me. After handing over the project, we were never paid, and neither was the funder. The owners of the company were enjoying the assets, and still are. The last tender briefing that I attended at Sadara, the agricultural college that was in charge of the training for the province, I was shocked to realize that my skin color was finally going to be the demise of my work with the people that I'd grown to love and serve. The tender document said only black-owned enterprises were eligible to quote on the work. I had no place there. Just like the corporate that refused to do business with a white-owned company, government was now laying it down. No recognition for many years of input. Nothing counted except the skin color. A tragic day had dawned. An emptiness engulfed me in the midst of my telephone, constantly ringing as growers were trying to understand why I wasn't turning up to collect their produce. Simple trust had been broken. After imploring many government heads to intervene, with no response at all, I had to give it up. It felt like I was giving up my own life. Years of being creative and development to this, nothing. It was during this time that it dawned on me fully that I, as a white person, am not welcome in Africa. Social media comments flooded in, the hatred for whites being blatantly and flagrantly punted. While hate speech is supposed to be against the law, there is nothing stopping this attack. The worst of it was when I realized that South Africa would never be my home. I could not call it home, and the feelings of abandonment were overwhelming. I was a transient alien, no place to put down roots any longer. My daughter spearheaded the move to Ireland, a beautiful country that has welcomed us. Not born here, and yet fully accepted into the way of life. In the wake of the turmoil, I asked myself, if I could not be accepted after all my years of giving into communities, who would ever be accepted? Then I remembered the plight of those in poverty, struggling in the rural areas with no care from government. They are manipulated and controlled through their struggles. It's no wonder there are uprisings and riots. Politics, the king of corruption and cruelty. When are leaders going to serve the people? It is not only my white skin that is abhorred. I ask myself again, are there any winners in Africa? And that's a beautifully written article about her personal experience in South Africa, in KwaZulu-Natal. And there are a lot of images attached to the story. What I'll do is I'll attach a link to it below this video, so you can go and check out the images of this wonderful lady, Susan Pletts. So tragic. Please remember to subscribe to Loving Life on YouTube to be kept informed. Please remember to register on lovinglifetv.com to be kept informed. Please like this video, please share this video, and above all, please